Hey guys! Alright, so I'm really excited because I'm just going to talk about something really simple today. I'm going to talk about something called peaceful transition of power. Okay, so we talked about the executive branch last time, and the executive branch executes the law, the legislative branch writes the law. But I want to talk today about the importance of peaceful transition of power, something that you probably don't think about because in America, we're very accustomed to when a president is elected, everyone sort of sucks it up and deals with it if they don't like him. And if they do, then they like it. And we have 4 years, right? That is not the normal way that most countries have dealt with power, leaders, transition of power. If you have read any history or watched any movies, you've probably seen heads rolling, beheading, kings murdered, queens murdered, all kinds of revolutionary upheaval, things like that. That's because throughout history, there's never really been a legitimate or respectable way for somebody to be put in their position of power. And so the people never bought into or buy into the position of power. In the United States, when the founders were putting together the Constitution, the thing they were more afraid of than the power of the presidency was the legitimacy of how the president became president. They knew that if the citizenry did not agree with or like the way that the president became president, they would never buy into his power. So none of his powers would matter if the citizenry didn't believe that how he got there was legitimate, right? We have to respect the way the president is elected. If we don't, then we're not going to respect the president. How many of you guys have seen all of the little kind of hashtags, not my president, things like that, right? Well, that's because people have decided that they don't buy into the way that President Trump was elected. They've decided that he was elected through unlawful means, or that the way he was elected was invalid or incorrect, or the Electoral College is not correct. Those types of arguments are incredibly powerful because they diminish the legitimacy of the person in the office. And that is how so many other countries end up having revolutions all the time, because there are people who stir up strife and angst and anger in the citizenry, telling them that the way that such and such president got into their position was through illegal means, and therefore they deserve to be removed, forcibly removed via the revolutionaries. Not lawfully removed, but forcibly removed. And if you've noticed, there's been a lot of talk about the Electoral College and, anger about the Electoral College. I will explain more about the Electoral College in my next video. That's not the point right now. The point is, if we as American citizens don't respect the way in which our president is elected, we're going to end up like all of these other countries where we have revolution, new government, and it's never going to be peaceful, constant chaos, tyranny, and the like, right? Because we aren't handling things through lawful means. We're going through it unlawfully. And that's a really key thing that the founders wanted to avoid. If there needs to be a change, if the way in which our president is elected should not be the Electoral College, that can be handled lawfully and constitutionally, legally, and reasonably. But most of the time, when I've heard arguments against the Electoral College, it's been these sort of revolutionary, let's throw out the government type of arguments with no actual purpose or point or suggestion for what could replace that. So, the thing I want y'all to realize as American citizens is how blessed we are to have gone 250 years and one president goes in and another goes out and we all deal with it. There hasn't been any sort of major revolution. We don't see Trump coming up to the White House with his, army brigade and Obama fighting with his, trying to take the position. It's nothing like that. It's peaceable, and that's remarkable. That's something the founders were incredibly nervous about. They had seen all of the violence and bloodshed throughout history, and they knew just how tenuous any sort of transition of power would be. And the crazy thing about our American presidents is that they have actually held some of the most power in the whole world. And yet, prior to Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who served in 4 terms, no president served more than 2 terms, when legally they were allowed to serve more than 2 terms. In case you didn't know this, the Constitution gives no limitations on how many terms a president can serve. So in other words, Washington could have been elected 5 or 6 different times. Madison could have been, Jefferson could have been, all of them could have been, but they weren't, because most of them of their own volition stepped away after 2 terms. and respect and honor of George Washington's precedent, where he only served 2 terms and he stepped away. That's remarkable. I can't really emphasize to you how crazy that is. When people have power, they want to keep that power. That's how it's been in all countries throughout history. If you have power, you keep that power. And yet, there was such a respect for the law, for the system, for the way that things were supposed to work, for George Washington, that our presidents throughout history, up until Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which is the mid-1900s, they stepped away of their own accord after 2 terms. I think there was 1 or 2 presidents that attempted to run for a 3rd term and lost. But other than that, they all stepped away. And that's pretty incredible. So, as an American citizen, I want you to pause and think and listen to reason when you hear all of these people complaining and yelling about the Electoral College or the legitimacy of the way that a president is elected. Because those types of calls are calls for revolution, violence, and chaos. If there's a legitimate reason that we should change the Electoral College, that should be handled legally, legitimately, reasonably, and constitutionally. Next time around, I'm going to talk about the Electoral College and why the founders decided to create and use an Electoral College to vote for the president. But for today, just take in and digest the importance and the beauty of this whole peaceful transition of power and the fact that we've gone 250 some years in the United States and we've continually had peaceful transition of power between presidents. That's remarkable. We respect the system. That's why we suck it up and we say, okay, if our president wins, he deserves to be there. That's a big deal. Stripping that away, destroying that, which is the attempt in current modern day politics, is a very, very dangerous thing. So keep that in mind as you think about the Electoral College and any alternatives. And in my next video, I will tell you why we had an Electoral College in the first place. All right, bye.